Hello, everyone. This is Shirley Farrar, and you have entered Encouragement on Fire. And I'm glad that you have chosen to view tonight's episode. It is episode number 57, and we're just moving along. We are going to talk about Crohn's disease and a little data. We're going to talk about the types of Crohn's disease, and possibly we will make it to some symptoms of Crohn's disease. Before we get started, I want to give a shout out to a few support groups that assist with Crohn's disease. And there is an actual Facebook page, Christians with Crohn's disease. So you may want to check it out. I have not been on it. All I know is a definite support group, and I've seen a lot of intel. So maybe check it out and see if it's for you. And they're providing you food ideas, support, encouragement. So you never know, it may work out for you. The second one is actually from Crohn's Colitis Foundation.org. And this one provides various things. It provides diet, exercise ideas. It talks about the 2023 virtual IBD programs. So they're talking about a lot of information on there, and it's supposed to help you to manage, to possibly alleviate the symptoms. So I definitely would encourage you to check it out and see if it works for you. Okay. And as always, we're going to talk about cancer, defeating cancer, sickness, and disease. So let's get to it. So on Encourage Minute today, I want to talk to you about the President's 2024 initiative. Its budget makes strategic investments in the cancer moonshot as part of the President's Unity Agenda. And this is to deliver new ways to prevent, detect, and to treat cancer. So the reason I wanted to talk to you about this is because anytime that the government is providing resources, we really should utilize them, find out about them, and where are they located, because that provides us access. So the first one I want to bring to your attention is giving $1.7 billion at the Department of Health and Human Services to support dedicated cancer moonshot activities at the National Cancer Institute, Centers for Disease Control and Prevention, remember the CDC, like we've always been talking about, the FDA, the HRSA. There's so many different major organizations that will be receiving over $1.7 billion. I'm saying to you that it's really important that if this money is being distributed to these organizations, you may want to find out what are the services that will be provided in your community, because there will be services that you can access. Okay. The next one that the government is doing is $680 million at the Environmental Protection Agency, or EPA, for programs to reduce environment and toxic exposures. Remember, we talked about when someone gets cancer, it's not always hereditary, or it's not always their diet and other things that we talked about, but it could be the environment that they have been exposed to. The next one that I want to talk about is $40 million at the U.S. Department of Agriculture, USDA, for the National Institute of Food Agriculture and the Agricultural Research Service, and a new program aimed at preventing nutrition release diseases. So our food, they're putting a lot of money into making sure that some of the diseases are not coming through our agriculture portion. So like I said, you want to make sure that you're reading your labels. You want to make sure that you're doing your research on that, because diet, we know, in all chronic diseases affect us. We need to make sure that we're aware of that. So all of these different things are part of that moonshot initiative. And I encourage you, because your health matters. Everything that happens within the United States of America affects you. And you should make sure that you're looking into some of these things. If not, just going to online just to read up about some of this information. All right, so today we are talking about IBD, or inflammatory bowel disease. And there are two types of IBDs. So one is Crohn's disease that we're talking about today, and the other one is called ulcerative colitis. So we're not going to talk about that one today, but we are going to talk about Crohn's disease. And Crohn's disease is a form of IBD, or inflammatory bowel disease. And it's also known for several other names. And we're going to talk about that in a minute. Because, first of all, for me, I know that I have several family members that have IBD. I have a few friends that have IBD, and they have not shared with me their symptoms. They have not shared with me their experience. And as I began to research this, I kind of understand why they did not share it with me. Simply because, in a way, it is a private issue. But at the same time, if we are unaware how to help someone who has IBD disease, then how can we possibly help them? But if a friend or a relative tells you that they have IBD or they have Crohn's disease, I encourage you to, first of all, listen to this podcast, but also do your own research. So then you will know about it. Don't expect them to talk to you about it, because it can get a little intense, as you will see as we progress throughout the month talking about Crohn's disease. Be respectful to them. If they want to talk about it, fine. But you can help them in many ways, because we're going to talk about diet. We're going to talk about different things that you can help them to relieve some of the symptoms. Okay. And you'll know more about that as we're moving forward. This particular Crohn's disease came from a gentleman named Dr. Beryl Crohn. He was born 1884 to 1983, and he was the first physician to describe the illness in 1932. So that is where it originated from. And it estimates that 500,000 Americans have Crohn's disease in a given year. So think about that. So yes, the numbers, anytime there's 500,000, it's too many. Anytime there is any chronic disease, it's too much. And this particular disease shows up in individuals in their 20s and in their 30s. So it's very rare if it is diagnosed later on. It probably was there prior to that, but it wasn't diagnosed. But normally it's 20s and 30s it's diagnosed. Now let's talk about the types of Crohn's disease. The first one is called ileocolitis. And this is inflammation, and it occurs in the small intestines and part of the large intestines, or the colon. So I encourage all of you to make sure that if you're at an age, you're in your 50s or 45 on up, making sure that you're getting your colonoscopy, because that's important. But if you have a history of IBD disease or Crohn's disease in your family, you may want to start out early, even if you're not getting symptoms, just to find out what's going on, in your system, just to make sure that there's nothing that's going to creep up later on, or, come about. And like I said, it's diagnosed in your 20s and 30s. So if you're past that and you're not having any symptoms, the likelihood that you're going to have it later on is probably you're at low risk. Okay. But this particular one, the ileocolitis, that one is the most common type of Crohn's disease. And then there's the ileitis, ileitis, ileitis. This is the swelling and inflammation develop in the small intestines, or ileum. So remember, the ileocolitis is inflammation It occurs in the small intestines and part of the large intestines. But if it's swelling and inflammation in the small intestines, that's just the ileitis. And I'm not saying just, because this is a chronic disease, and it, in any stage, it can be a lot. So the third one is gastroduodenal, and I hope that I'm saying it correctly. Inflammation and irritation affect the stomach and the top of the small intestine, or the duodenum. It's still the same area. The lower intestine area is being affected. Your stomach is involved. But they diagnose you based on these 4 criterias, but it's still all Crohn's disease. So the last one is called the jejunum. There is a fancy name that goes along with it, but I'm not going to try to pronounce that one. But it's jejunum. And that's the patchy areas of inflammation develop in the upper half of the small intestines. So if you are being diagnosed with a Crohn's disease, these could be the 4 that the doctor begins to talk about. And so you need to know what area it is. You need to know what actually is going on. And then I would even say, what's the next step of that, right? So we're always thinking, will I have this forever? Now, according to the doctors, they say, based on the research, based on what they've seen up to now, they believe that individuals will always have Crohn's disease, okay? And they can only go by the data. They can only go by the research, because they base their practice on science. So I'm saying to you, that's why I presented you with the support groups, because the support groups are people who are living with Crohn's disease each and every day, and they are finding ways with eating and exercise and various things, how they can manage, how they can treat, what is the best things that were for them. But remember, what's for them may not always work for you. However, more information, more knowledge is better than not knowing what is out there that can assist and help you. Okay. And that's one of the reasons why this podcast, we're talking about chronic diseases each month, to bring you some information that maybe you haven't thought about, that you can continue to explore, you can continue to do your research on, and see if some of these things are working for you. What are some of the causes of Crohn's disease? So, according to the Mayo Clinic and according to the Cleveland Clinic, it is autoimmune disease, right? So it's bacteria in the digestive tract causing the body's immune system to attack your healthy cells. It could be genes. Inflammatory bowel disease, IBD, often runs in families. So we talked about that earlier. It could be something that runs in your family. That's why it's really good to know the history of your family. Asking your parents, not being, we're embarrassed or we feel that I don't need to know that information. It's really good to know the history of your family. And if you don't think anyone wants to know the information, maybe you could write it down. I've encouraged my mom to write down our family history in an actual book. So she has begun to write our family history in the book, all the things that have been upon our family on various things. It could be, mental health. It could be physical health. It could be all kinds of things that the family has gone through and how we have overcome. So she's in the process of writing that right now, because it needs to go on to generation, because the doctor always says to you, do you know anyone in your family that has suffered any of these things? And most of us only know our current family, right? Our immediate family. And we say no. But if we had known that our great grandmother or great grandfather dealt with these things and their great grandparent did, then that's something we can provide to the doctor. And now they have a better chance of diagnosing us on good information. The third one is smoking. So if you are smoking, you have some of the symptoms that we're about to talk about. I encourage you to stop smoking immediately. Now, that's your choice, of course. But do you know it doubles the risk of Crohn's disease? So think about that. All the research says that smoking is not healthy for you in many ways. And this is another one added to that, that it can cause your risk of Crohn's disease to increase. So it's not worth it. It's just not worth it. But that's for you to decide. So we're going to talk about a few symptoms before we get off today. I do want to talk to you about them. Some of the symptoms, this disease is only in your colon. I want to make sure I state that. It's in the small or large intestines. And some of the symptoms may be mild, and some may be severe. There's many ways that you could be affected with these symptoms. It could be gradual, very gradual, and then all of a sudden it could be sudden, right? And then sometimes there's no warning at all. So at least, even if it's gradual or sudden, you have some type of warning. But then there's the third way, there is no warning and it just comes like that, right? So when you have someone in your inner circle who says they have to leave immediately, and you know they've been diagnosed with Crohn's disease, we should have compassion and we should pray for them, first of all, and we should help them in any way possible. Okay. Now, this particular disease, Crohn's disease, can go in remission, just like cancer. It can go in remission and you have fewer symptoms. So when the doctors say that there is no cure to it, it can go in remission. And so I like to say, why does it go into remission? Right? Think about that. There's something that's going on that helps it to go into remission. So let's explore that in the next session. But right now, we're going to talk about some of the symptoms that we need to be concerned about. Okay. So if you are, you're getting diarrhea a lot, think about it that way, diarrhea. You're getting a lot of fevers. And I'm not talking about hot flashes because I know some of us are getting hot flashes depending on your age. We're not talking about that, but actual fevers, and they're unexplained. And you have a lot of fatigue. You're getting sleep, but just very tired all the time. Abdominal pain. So if you have somebody, there's a lot of pain going on, a lot of cramping going on, but it's not explained. Make sure you're writing this information down so when you see your doctor, you can give them this information. And then there's blood in the stool. Now, there could be many reasons there could be blood in the stool. However, there's blood in the stool. It could lead to them diagnosing you with Crohn's disease. But there's many tests that have to be done first before they can even do that. And then mouth sores. So, can you have mouth sores from other things? Absolutely. But if there's no other reason for mouth sores and you're getting mouth sores and you have fatigue and you have fever and you have diarrhea, then the doctor can diagnose this properly in addition to some tests. Also, reduced appetite and weight loss. How many of you know someone right now that they just don't want to eat and they're rapidly losing weight? Right? We always assume that it's anorexia, but not necessarily. It could be that they are about to be diagnosed with Crohn's disease, or they have been, and they just haven't shared that with you. And then pain or drainage near around the bottom area. I'll say that. So, all of those particular symptoms can be a direct diagnosis for a doctor to diagnose you, or it could be something totally different. The important thing is to make sure that you're writing down this information and you're seeing your doctor about it. And the doctor may tell you it's not Crohn's disease. It could be something totally different. Okay. And then let's say you're having inflamed skin, your eyes and your joints, right? Everything is being inflamed. Now, we all know that there's other, inflammatory diseases, because I talked to you about sarcoidosis before, and it's an inflammation disease. However, Crohn's disease can also cause inflamed skin and eyes and joints. And then there's the inflamed liver or bile ducts. And that's when there's tubes that go from the liver to the small intestines. So, your doctor will talk to you more about that if that is your diagnosis. And then there's also a symptom of kidney stones. So if you've been getting kidney stones and some of the other symptoms, it could be Crohn's disease. Kidney stones, are the hard deposits, and I believe it comes from minerals and salts. But I've never had any, but I've heard that they are extremely hard to pass. That's a difficult thing for anyone going through kidney stones. Nonetheless, going through Crohn's disease, and a symptom is kidney stones. So like I said, if you know someone who is going through Crohn's disease, we kind of see this in a different light when you actually explore what they're actually going through. And I encourage all of you, if there's someone out there, help them, pray for them, help them with diet and exercise and relieving of the stress, because that's a number one thing that they go through that causes the inflammation to increase. And then these individuals would also have iron deficiency. So of course, they're going to look tired because of the fatigue that they're going through, but also because of the iron deficiency or the anemia. And then in children, they say that there's delayed growth or sexual development. So it's different for adults versus children. And the first thing I want to say to all of you is that if you're having any of these symptoms, the first thing that you need to do is what? What would I tell you? Go see your doctor. That is the very first thing that I would tell you. Go see your doctor. And what's the second thing I would tell you? Take the test that the doctor wants you to take. And then request a specialist, because your family practitioner can only take you so far. And then your specialist is going to help you in more detail tests and diagnosis, because they're specialized in what they are doing. So when we return to talk about Crohn's disease, we're also going to talk about some of the additional symptoms, and we're going to talk about when you're diagnosed, what exactly do they do to diagnose you? Okay, so we're going to talk about that also. Before we go, if you are feeling generous, that you will take the time to donate to the Encouragement on Fire, and we have our QR code at the bottom of our screen. And we are just so thankful for many of you already deciding to donate to make sure that our voice is heard in the community, on social media and other places. And we just want to say thank you. In addition to that, you can also go to HouseBreachRestoration.org. That's HouseBreachRestoration.org to get more information about what we are doing in the community, in addition to our podcast on Sunday on YouTube at 8 p.m. Okay? All right. So I want to say to you that we still have our special prayer line, our testimony line that you can call us at 856-857-1859 to ask for prayer, or you can call us to tell us a wonderful testimony that possibly we can share with an anonymous name, just to let people know that people in the community are overcoming these chronic diseases. All right, then I have to leave you for today, and I do not want to. I always enjoy talking to you, and I am encouraged when you comment in our YouTube comment section. I love it because I can respond in real time. Thank you for joining in tonight, Sunday, on YouTube at 8 p.m. for Encouragement on Fire. And I am Shirley Farrar, and I'll talk to you soon.